Hey guys, it's Smiles here again. Going to talk about the Amonkhet spoilers for today. Just going to dive straight in. First of all, we've got 5 new artifacts, and they are all monuments for the 5 new gods. Ronas for green, Arketra for white, Kefnet for blue, Bontu for black, and Hazaret for red. I already talked about the Hazaret card, which has already been spoiled in another video. All of these monuments reduce the casting cost of creatures of the relevant colour by 1 colourless. It's quite refreshing to see mana cost reduction for creatures, because it's not something that we see very often, and if we do, it's not in a cycle like this sort of thing. Obviously with spells, you've got Goblin, Electromancer, and Baral, that sort of thing. So all of the monuments also do something small whenever you cast a creature spell of any colour, and I think the green one of these is the best, which target creature you control gains +2/+2 and trample until the end of turn. The white one gives you a 1/1 white warrior creature token with vigilance. The blue one, you target an opponent's creature, it doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. And the black one, your opponent loses 1 life, you gain 1 life. And the red one gives you the opportunity to discard a card, and if you do, then you draw a card. That last one in particular I think could be quite good with Madness, because you could cast a creature, then discard to draw a card, but that card you're discarding, it could be a creature that you then cast, which gives you another trigger, and obviously it gives you a discard outlet. It's a shame that the Hazaret's monument is facing the other way, or this would make a really good kind of like a panorama of pictures to put on the wall. Moving on, we've had a lot more blue cards spoiled today. The first of which we'll talk about is Kefnet the Mindful, my favourite of the lot. So he's 2 and 1 blue, legendary creature god, flying, indestructible. Kefnet cannot attack or block unless you have 7 or more cards in hand. You can pay 3 and 1 blue as an activated ability, draw a card, you may return a land you control to your hand. Straight away this makes me think Fevered Visions. I don't see you playing a deck with Kefnet in it that doesn't have Fevered Visions. I don't know how you're going to reasonably maintain 7 cards in hand to attack or block them. I think you'd really need to be playing some sort of hard control, but that's fine because this is a win condition that you can drop relatively early. It gives you an ability along the way to draw cards and return lands, which essentially gives you an extra mana for that turn. If you've missed a land drop, you can replay a land to tap it again, and obviously it has indestructible, so it can sit there and last. You don't have to worry about a lot of your opponent's removal. It's going to be, especially in standard, they'll have to have some very specific removal to get rid of it. Next up we have Scribe of the Mindful. So this is quite a cool creature, 2 and 1 blue. It has an activated ability of 1 colourless, tap it, sacrifice Scribe of the Mindful, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. I can only really see this card being played in limited. I mean, you play it when you can, you get some damage in early game, later on in the game you can block, sack it in response and get an instant or sorcery back. Then we have Decision Paralysis, and not a great card. 3 and 1 blue, instant, tapped up to 2 target creatures. Those creatures don't untap during their controller's next untap step. Pretty much only playable in limited in my opinion. Moving on, we see the return of Essence Scatter, 1 and 1 blue, instant, counter target creature spell. I think this could be incredible in the current standard environment with Baral. It becomes 1 blue, counter target creature spell and loot. I think given how prevalent creatures always are in standard, Essence Scatter is better to have in the format than Negate. The real beauty here is that we can play it alongside Negate. Then we have Drake Haven, 2 and 1 blue. It's an enchantment. Whenever you cycle or discard a card, you may pay 1. If you do, create a blue Drake token with flying. This is quite interesting, especially with Kefnet. If you're going to want to have 7 cards in your hand, then at the end of most turns you're going to want to be in a situation where you're discarding a card, and when you do, you can turn it into a blocker and or an attacker. It just gives you something to do with that card that you're just throwing away. And on top of that, given the cards we have in the format right now, you could be throwing away an Embalm card that then you can return from the graveyard. Last of the blue cards that were spoiled today is also a white card. It's Temet, Vizier of Nakatamun. He's 1 white and 1 blue, a legendary creature, human cleric. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature token you control gets +1/+1 until the end of turn, and it can't be blocked this turn. Then he has Embalm, 3 colourless, 1 white and 1 blue, so 5 total. This card will definitely find a home in a Embalm themed deck. I think this could possibly work in a Metallurgic Summonings deck as well. How powerful this card is really going to be based on other cards with Embalm that are printed in this set. But one thing that was confirmed at this point is that every colour but black has Embalm creatures in it. Most of them are in blue and white. Next up we've got a couple of red and white cards, the first of which is Consuming Fervour. It's 1 red and it's an enchantment aura enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3 and has, at the beginning of your upkeep, put a -1/-1 counter on this creature. I love the flavour on this card, you know, taking the early advantage of the +3/+3 that slowly wears off and eventually even kills the creature. Obviously, we're expecting a lot of creatures that interact with -1/-1 counters, so there's probably going to be some creatures this is going to be a benefit to, maybe. This could even be used to effect in burn decks in Modern. You could Simian Spirit Guide and drop this onto a Goblin Guide or a Monastery Swift Spear and be swinging for 5 damage turn 1 and 4 the next turn and 3 and so on, whereas like some pump spells that are used in Modern frequently are there for the turn. This at least persists for 3 turns. Then we have Onward to Victory. It's an instant. Target creature gets +X and +0 until the end of turn, where X is its power, so it doubles up its power to start with. And then the great part of this is that Victory, the aftermath side of it, gives target creature double strike until the end of turn. So you know, for 6 mana you can quadruple the amount of damage output by a creature. Maybe Mardu vehicles will play 1 or 2 of. I mean, this is good enough like to put on a fleet wheel when it attacks to double its power. But I imagine on like a Heart of Kiran, which is a 4/4, if your opponent's tapped out and you've got 6 mana up, you can just go ahead and swing for 16. Next up we have Tarkrop Elite, which is a 2/2 flyer for 3 and 1 white, so 4 converted mana cost. It's a bird warrior creature. When it attacks, you may exert it, and gives all of the creatures you control +1/+1 until the end of turn. I didn't think this was a common at first. I actually thought this was either like a junk rare or an uncommon. So this is going to give a lot of, in draft especially, this is going to give a lot of decks some massive reach. It almost requires that you have 2 other creatures attacking for it to be worth using the ability. That's not entirely true though. You know, there might be a scenario where you desperately need to give a particular creature +1/+1 just so it can survive the combat. Next we have Cast Out, which is an enchantment for 3 colourless 1 white, has flash. When it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until Cast Out leaves the battlefield. Now, apart from its restriction to your opponent's permanents, this is essentially an Oblivion Ring with flash, but on top of that it has 1 white cycling, so you can throw this away and draw another card in the scenario that you don't need it. I can definitely see this card seeing some play. I don't know whether or not the 4 converted mana cost is going to be too much for it to be played competitively, but I suppose we'll see. I think this is good to use in decks that only have a limited amount of slots for removal. It's a great coverall because it hits anything that isn't a land. On top of that, if you draw it and it's not a situation where you need it, you can pay 1 to just throw it away and draw another card. And on top of that, it has flash, so you can play it in your opponent's turn to exile an attacking creature, or you can play it just at the end of their turn just because you had the mana up and there was something you wanted to get rid of. So I think any time a deck was sort of umming and ahhing about putting an Oblivion Ring in, Cast Out would be a much easier include. Last but not least, we have the black and green cards spoiled today. We've got Splendid Agony, which is 2 and 1 black. Instant, distribute 2 -1/-1 counters among 1 or 2 creatures. It's not great, probably limited only play, maybe some decks that are really heavily focused on -1/-1 counters, but it's just expensive and doesn't do very much. Then we have Channeler Initiate, which is quite an interesting one. It's 1 and 1 green, it's a human druid. When Channeler Initiate enters a battlefield, put 3 -1/-1 counters on target creature you control, so it doesn't have to be it itself. Now it's a 3/4, and it has tap, remove a -1/-1 counter from Channeler Initiate, add 1 mana of any colour to your mana pool. Interestingly, it can put them on any creature you control. This gives the card a lot of versatility because, I mean, a lot of the time I think you're going to want to plan to drop the tokens on it and then slowly remove them, creating a big beta, making you mana along the way. But in reality, if you've got a 1/1 that you're willing to sacrifice, this is a 2 mana 3/4, so you have that versatility of choice so long as you can get a 1 drop out consistently. There was 1 more card spoiled today, and unfortunately it wasn't another cartouche. I really wanted to see another one of those, but this one is Exemplar of Strength. It's 1 and 1 green, it's a human warrior. When Exemplar of Strength enters the battlefield, put 3 -1/-1 counters on target creature you control. Whenever Exemplar of Strength attacks, remove a -1/-1 counter from it. If you do, gain 1 life. This one's a 4/4. So on turn 2, if you're willing to sacrifice another creature, you get yourself a turn 2 4/4, which I don't think you can complain about really. Or alternatively, it's essentially a 2/2 for 2 anyway, because the first time it attacks, it's going to be attacking as a 2/2. It would have removed the counter, and it would have given you 1 life at that point. And then slowly, it's going to become a 4/4. So again, I think this is actually a step in a different direction to Kaladesh, because we had Green Wheel Liberator, which was like a 4/3 for 2 on turn 2 with Revolt trigger. You don't require the Revolt with this one. It's consistently going to be a 2/2 that will become a 4/4 over time. and it's yet to be seen whether or not we'll have ways of removing those -1/-1 counters. But if you weren't already aware, putting a +1/+1 counter onto a creature actually will remove any -1/-1 counters on there until they're all gone, and then it will start to add +1/+1 counters. Beware, the first thing I thought when I saw these two cards here is that Eldrazi Displacer, while it's still in standard, is going to be quite effective against decks utilising these sort of cards. You know, if you do play a Exemplar of Strength on turn 2 and put the counters on the creature, Eldrazi Displacer could come down later, bounce this and return it, and then you'll either have to put the -1/-1 counters on it, putting it back to a 1/1, or potentially put them on another creature and kill it. That's everything we've got for today. If there are some more cards spoiled tomorrow, which hopefully there will be, I'll try my best to put up another video. If you've liked the video, give it the thumbs up. If you want to see some more, subscribe. Comment below on what you'd like to see in future, or just your general opinion on the cards we've seen today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.